at Solutions House, and Solutions House has a motto of answers only. Now that's a motto, is a reminder rather than a rule, and it's a reminder that now in 2022 it's important for us to look at the problems for only so long as needed to come up with the solutions. Because this must be a solutions economy. In fact, this must be the solutions decade that we're working in now, which is why Solutions House exists. And Solutions House is co-convened by Futela, and in fact, these are Futela's offices on a normal day. So a week ago, this was filled with chairs and desks, and Futelans beavering away. So thank you so much to the Futelans who are here for letting us have the office for this week. And it's also, another of our partners is the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, who is co-convener of Solutions House, and also Google. And I want to thank of our partners in Solutions House for making this happen. And in fact, when we had the idea for this, should we say 9 weeks ago, what we realised is that between Futela's clients, and there's some great clients who are here, Exponential Roadmap Initiative members, and of course Google's partners, we had an enormous number of solutionists that we could gather together quite quickly in this space to talk about how to reach 1.5 and how to halve emissions, by 2030. I've got a few housekeeping notes for this lovely space, which I'm going to make sure to go through. So we are not expecting a fire alarm. It did not go off in the first session. Let's hope it does not go off in the second session. If it should go off, please follow someone with a answers only yellow t-shirt, calmly walking down the stairs, stairway A there, or the stairway at the back. And then we will reconvene in front of the building, this and behind. There are 2 bathrooms at the back. One of them is an accessible bathroom. And one of the things which really bothers me when I go to sessions is this idea that somehow human beings should sit without moving for sort of an hour and a half without a loo break. So please get up, use the bathrooms. There's white noise machines in there, so please respect the human and make sure that you are you're enjoying yourself whilst you're here. If you need any help or have any questions, there's wonderful folks wearing Solutions House Answers Only t-shirts who'll be happy to help. Wi-Fi. If you'd like to get onto the Wi-Fi, look for Solutions House, either 2G or 5G, depending on what you want to use Wi-Fi for. And the password is Answers Only, capital A, capital O. So Answers Only, Wi-Fi. And if you do go onto the Wi-Fi, I would really hope that you might use it to tweet or LinkedIn or any other platform of your choice any thoughts about the sessions which we're having here today. And you'll see the hashtags for that on the back of your chairs. It's hashtag Solutions House and hashtag Climate Week NYC. And please do share everything that inspires or challenges you, what you agree with and what you disagree with here at Solutions House. I'm now going to hand over to my co-convener and co-presenter and co-organiser, Johan Falk, for this amazing conversation we're going to have about the very, very, very tricky subject of supply chains and how can we halve emissions by 2030.
Thank you, Sophie. And amazing that we managed to pull this off in 8 weeks. It shows that it was maybe a crazy idea, but I think it's fantastic when you see all the events lined up, focusing on solutions. One of the key strategies in order to scale solutions exponentially will be to reinvent the supply chains. So that's the second pillar of the playbook, which we launched in the previous session. You should bring one with you. So that is what we will focus on today. And we get this work. Okay. Let's see.
Backwards, forwards.
Okay, make sure you're on. On is a good word. There we go.
Thank you. So as you can see, we have amazing people here from different companies who will specifically focusing on how we are reinventing supply chains with a focus to halve emissions by 2030. And we run this through three particular themes. The first one is how can we scale climate action among companies? How can we get sufficient number of companies actually starting to set the compass direction? So that is basically the first question. The other is focusing in on one of the hotspots, which is renewable energy. How can we actually scale renewable energy and electricity through the supply chain? We have two of the leading companies, IKEA and Apple, will share their experiences and discuss how can we scale these practices much faster. And the third one is about really rethinking the complete value chain and drive radical innovation. We need to get much more disruptors into our value chain. We can't just rely on the existing supply chains and value chains. We really need to apply innovation in all aspects. So that's the third part, where we have Polestar and Houdini, which I think are two excellent examples of best practices, which can be copied by anyone. And yeah, just briefly about the Exponential Roadmap Initiative. We bring together innovators, transformers, taking action in line with the 1.5 ambition to halve emissions by 2030 through exponential climate action and solutions. And we gather a number of companies and organizations, both scientific organizations, NGOs, as well as leading companies. We have very sharp requirements, I would say the sharpest to onboard companies to join the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, among all initiatives. So our idea is to drive from the front. And one of the initiatives within the Exponential Roadmap Initiative that we set up is the 1.5 supply chain leaders. And I'd like Laura Perez, who is Senior Project Manager for the supply chain leaders, to give a few highlights on the work by the supply chain leaders. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi everybody, good morning and welcome to the Solutions House. Thank you very much everyone. As mentioned, I'm Laura, working for the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, and I will just talk very briefly about the supply chain leaders. I do understand it is a mouthful, supply chain leaders, but I can tell you it's definitely worth it remembering. The supply chain leaders is this group of companies that you can see here in this screen, and they have all committed to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions throughout their value chains in line with the 1.5 degree ambition. Understanding the fact that they need to work with their suppliers, considering also their SMEs, to halve emissions by 2030 and to be net zero by the latest of 2050. This group of 15 companies here work together to set strategies and to really become with the best practices in order to manage on how is it that we can engage with the suppliers. Something very important to note here about this group is that there are no pledges allowed. We're not talking pledges, we're talking action. And this is what the supply chain leaders is all about. We act. We don't say, we act. But how is it, next please, how is it that we do this? Well, in a nutshell, we basically work together, all the companies that you saw previously, and we develop guides on, for example, how is it that we can accelerate the access to renewable electricity for corporates? How is it that we can do that? In terms of guidelines, for example, how can we engage with our suppliers? How can we manage for our suppliers to get realistic 1.5 aligned targets? All of these, we bring it together and we compile it in a tool that later on Diana will cover a little bit more, called the Supplier Engagement Guide. There is a bunch of tools, the business playbook has been mentioned, there are webinars that we have that are easily accessible, all of them for free, on the Supplier Engagement Guide, and also we have the SME Climate Hub that support the SMEs. In a nutshell, I'm finishing now. What we try to do with the 1.5 supply chain leaders is really to make climate solutions simpler, accessible, and cheaper for all corporates, because we all need to be together on this. Thank you very much. Over to you, Yuan.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm fine. I don't need a mic. I'm just going to shout. So thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to ask Diane now from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development to come up and talk a little bit around, how do we do this practically? How do we actually make this work in terms of the supplier engagement vision?
Hi everybody, so I'm Diana Wilkinson from BSR. I think I'll start off today by reiterating something I'm sure most of you are well aware of. Also, should I stand? Is that better? Maybe you can't see. Okay. So value chains, obviously, at this point, I think all of us know, make up a disproportionate amount of a company's emissions. So I think at this point we know somewhere around 10 or 11 times the emissions are held in scope 3 rather than scope 1 and 2. And I think we all know also that emissions need to drastically reduce now. I say that from a nearly 80-degree record heat day in New York in late September. If we're looking to reach our 1.5 goal, we need to take that drastic action today. And given that the bulk of emissions are happening in the value chain, that's not something that we can do alone. So we have to really work together, and this collaborative approach really makes sense because many companies actually share suppliers, share geographies, and so if we want to raise the bar globally, we have to do so together. This is a global economy, global climate, and so what I'm going to focus today is the collaborative approach on helping companies decarbonize a complex value chain. So supply chains have specific issues that don't necessarily exist in scope 1 and 2. Dealing with sort of transparency issues, monitoring, incentivization, leverage issues with suppliers. All of those are really tough challenges that we need to pull best practices from companies all over to really help get those solutions. So enter kind of the 1.5 supply chain leaders and the supplier engagement guide. And so the supplier engagement guide that you find, it's on the Exponential Roadmap website, is something that was produced in tandem with a number of partners, including BSR, but it's a freely accessible, practical guide that goes over kind of step-by-step instructions on how suppliers can work to decarbonize. And we are obviously working towards that 1.5 vision, but I think what sets this apart as a really useful tool is that it's taking practical examples that come from leading companies and giving actual documentation and how-to guides. So this is really focused towards probably professionals that are working more in the kind of procurement, supply chain, sustainability space, but of course it's available to anyone who wants to use it. Really it's to kind of come up with a harmonized approach to supplier engagement on decarbonization. And suppliers can then also cascade that information down to their own value chain as well. So I'm not going to take you through the whole guide. As I said, it's free, and I really encourage everybody to go on, take a look at it. But I'll just walk you through kind of the general framework of what we're working with. So the engagement guide itself is set up. We've got kind of 4 pillars across the top, and then a 5th pillar of collaboration that kind of runs transversal through the whole process. But each of the 4 pillars is set up with 3 distinct recommendations, and then each recommendation itself covers the why, what, and how piece of it. And I think these questions here are really key because it helps obviously educate people who are using the guide itself, but it can also serve as a tool to help get buy-in from executives in your own company, working with other functions. So really this should help kind of not only educate, but help serve as a kind of discussion tool as well. So each of the pillars there, as I said, has information and examples of actions, so you can actually download actual supplier contracts and sort of discussion guides and things like that. So the foundation piece focuses on the key elements around getting management commitment, actually setting a 1.5 degree target for your suppliers, and then going about that, the greenhouse gas hotspotting of your supplier base as well. The procurement piece is kind of around getting your internal ducks in a row, so making sure that you have educated all of the different functions internally, you've updated all of the documents you needed to, you've maybe thought about how you're going to incentivize suppliers to work towards decarbonization, and then you're also starting to let your suppliers know, hey, here are our updated requirements and what we're going to be working on with you. The supplier engagement piece is actual kind of step-by-step guidance on how to discuss with your suppliers around decarbonization, free resources, points them to on greenhouse gas accounting, and all sorts of things like that. And then the reporting piece focuses on, okay, how do you actually set a cadence and requirements on what you're going to expect your suppliers to report on their carbon emissions, and then kind of takes you through how then you're going to report on that information yourself within your own company. And the last piece here on collaboration and innovation, and we'll talk more about that later in the session, is around, okay, what do we do now to help spearhead and move the needle even faster? Because we need to pilot programs, we need to be working collaboratively as we go through this decade of changes that we talked about and solutions to really decarbonize faster. So now I will hand it over to Matt's right. Is that correct?
Yeah, please. I love the speakers are taking over.
Okay, good.
Hand over to
All
Matt. That sounds great.
Okay, there you go.
I don't have any slides, so maybe I can. Let's keep it like that. Simpler for everybody. Don't touch. Anyway, I think you. What doesn't work? Does work? Doesn't work? Somebody's turned it off.
Yes, exactly.
So that's a cheeky move.
That's a beautiful word.
Anyway, so yes, supply chain. I think you can see a pattern here really about what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve. So starting off, I told you in the previous, if you want here, already way back in 2018 when we created the playbook and working with sort of starting the supply chain leaders and moving up to this. It's really about helping others, right? And this guide is about helping yourself. Because in a big company like Ericsson, we have a couple of hundred people working with suppliers. And they also need help to understand this and help their suppliers to work with the climate topics. So to make that happen, we need to sort of get them trained. And that's sort of the background to creating this guide where BSR has done a magnificent job of sort of structuring this and driving it into something that is usable for internally in your organizations, but also to work with your suppliers and share it. So I think that is really what we see. And also, you heard Laura talk about the non-pledge of being part of this whole exponential roadmap initiative. I mean, from Ericsson's side, we have signed, I think, around 200, or to be honest, we counted, over 200 pledges from starting before Paris and moving up to Paris and then all the way to now. And never ever since then has anybody come back to us and asked, so what did you do? Did you meet your pledge? Right? In this work, you qualify to be part of it. It's about action. It's about showing that you're doing that. It's about demonstrating that through public reporting and driving things. So for us, from Ericsson's side, we then took the decision to have our suppliers set 1.5 degree targets. And to be honest, we didn't do that through the playbook because these are sort of the 150 biggest suppliers we have that are responsible for 90% of our supply chain emissions. And we work directly with those 150, and we included them another 200 too. So it's 350 suppliers that we have a target that we sort of follow up on a daily basis. And we do that much more sort of thoroughly than through these tools. But then we have 24,500 suppliers totally. So the rest, the 24,350 suppliers that are not responsible for 90%, but the rest of the 10%, they also need to get going. And they are sort of responsible for big emissions for other customers and so on, and we wanted to help them too. So that's sort of the background to the whole work and the process of driving this. And I think for us it's all about moving towards the ones that are not generally part of these meetings and probably not listening now either. But working with them directly, we can really make the change. So I think that is what Ericsson has done, and we have started with setting those targets, and then we are working together. And as I said also previously, we can inspire our customers. And if you look on sort of the list of companies that are part of the 1.5 degree supply chain leaders and are working with these guys, a lot of them are our customers that we have managed to convince to be part of it, because if we as an industry work together, and then that has been sort of joined by also other tech companies. So tech sector is pretty heavy here. So Andreas, I think you're next up or soon up. It's also important to challenge the whole furniture sector and everybody else in that sector, and getting all sectors to move into this. So on that, I'd say thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Thank you so much, Mats. Mats, please stay as you are. Would you come back up here again? And would you pass them your mic? Thank you very much. Because I'm coming for you. Who has questions? We didn't feel confident doing this in the first session, but now, who has questions, perhaps about the barriers, perhaps about how it's going? Who has thoughts or questions about the 1.5? I'm going to come to the gentleman here, then the lady, then the gentleman behind. Hi.
Hi, Marty Spitzer with World Wildlife Fund. And Mats, I really appreciate the journey you're just describing in terms of getting that 90% of your supply chain to engage, and the roadmap being a way to help the rest. Can you talk a little bit about the leverage that you have with the suppliers? We work with a lot of companies, and they have challenges. There's a different philosophy about how heavy-handed they might want to be with their suppliers. Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry. So can you talk a little bit about how receptive and how they respond, and what your biggest levers are for driving those changes, whether it's going to be one-on-one or using the roadmap?
I think, and thank you for that question. I think what we have seen on our target is that we have changed the target every half years to strengthen it when it comes to sort of having all of the all suppliers responsible for the 90% plus the strategic suppliers having 1.5 degree targets by 2025, and start reporting and sort of tracking their progress as well in parallel. It's going faster than we thought, so there is a great momentum there and a lot of sort of engagement. Probably it's sort of the early movers that are strong and doing that, and there are pretty many among those, because probably they're high emitting suppliers and feel the pressure. So I think that is going very well. There we are very strong on sort of the engagement and the leverage. When it comes to how we drive it, and that's, I think we have shared it also on sort of these tools, the way that we put requirements on suppliers, and we have done that sort of jointly, so it's not Ericsson's only requirements, it's sort of more generic requirements that are in the SME Climate Hub and on sort of the supply chain leaders' web pages and so on, examples of how we can put requirements on the suppliers. They are strict requirements, so they are part of it, and the second part is really that we will follow that up when we have a reporting tool.
Thank you so very much. We'll try to get to 2 more questions.
Fabulous. Hi, CJ Gerard from Accenture. I'm curious about the non-compliance, how you handle that, and how as these companies are setting, as your suppliers are setting targets, how you both have the carrot and the stick around non-compliance and how you're kind of gathering data to report and validate at what cadence, I guess?
I think, to be brief, we are sort of soft on the outside and hard on the inside, so we start very gentle to work with them and help them. And so a lot of carrot with the stick in the contract, not using the stick yet, because I think this is a journey and we need to sort of have some patience with companies that haven't worked with this. So that is, yeah.
Diana, would you like to go on that?
Yeah, I think just to say that there was a little bit of a shift in perspective on this, right? I think a few years ago there was kind of a red line. If you don't meet this, you're out as a supplier. But what we found is that companies that hadn't set aggressive targets with their suppliers just picked those suppliers up, right? And so if we're looking at this as a global problem, like, we can't just say, we're not going to work with you anymore. I mean, I do think it's very important to have a line where, you can't cross that, but really pushing towards, educating the suppliers and helping transform everyone together. And we see that if, entire geographies are kind of raising the bar, then everybody moves forward together. So it's challenging because you do have to have some point where you say, like, okay, we're not going to work with you anymore, for sure. But I think the incentivization mechanisms really help on that in that avenue.
Thank you. We've got time for one last question.
Brilliant. Hello, I'm Thomas from The Switch, and what you guys are demonstrating is decarbonization through your value chain. And now you're asking your suppliers to essentially do the same. So you've been through the challenge of embedding this cultural change through all the levels of your management, it appears. What I'm curious about, because most companies out there have not done this, even if this room sort of makes it feel a little bit that everyone is doing this. So I'm curious to hear, how many years would you say that it typically takes to realistically create that cultural change that you're asking your suppliers to execute?
How many years?
I think probably realistically it's a 3-year process to really get ingrained movement within the organization.
The most important part is creating a coalition of the willing in your company. So working with the ones that are positive and not try to beat your head against the ones that don't want to work. And I think it's the same with suppliers and others. So really working, and with companies like this, working with the ones and really driving change. So that is the recipe to success across the board. And then, you change management now and then, so it's an endless process.
Endless.
Yeah.
It's endless. And I'm going to just take this and squeeze one very final quick question because he basically grabbed me as I was passing.
Sorry about that. A quick question then, related more to, but I'm Ramiro Fernandez, Campaign Director of Rate to Zero. And regarding these 150 suppliers that you have that you're prioritizing, how do they report their progress and emissions reductions, and how do you collect this information? Which are the reporting platforms there?
Yeah, very briefly. Currently it's a manual process. Of course, most of them are high-emitting suppliers, so they are on CDP, so we can collect the data. We have also worked together within this to create a tool for reporting. When that tool is ready, we will collect the data through that tool, which will be sort of compatible with CDP as well. But currently, the target is for them to set a target. Right, so a 1.5 degree target. So that is the starting point. And I think to put them on the journey to understand this, the playbook, everything. As I said, this is sort of a pattern that you can probably see now, having been here.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Matt. Thank you so very much. Wait for 1 second. And to invite Bessma Aljarbou up to join us to speak around the absolute centrality and crucial of renewable energy and how we're supporting our supply chains to make that great transition. Bessma, thank you. Oh, no, Bessma's already all mic'd up.
We'll see. Oh, good. The clicker. Great. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Bessma Aljarbou. I lead Supplier Carbon Solutions at Apple. I'm really excited to be here in person with all of you this week. At Apple, we've always designed with people at the center of everything that we do. And for decades, we've led the industry in our work on smarter and safer chemistry, making our products safe for those who use and make and recycle the products. An example of that was our move to halogen-free cables in 2012. And about 15 years ago, we really started to expand our focus to climate change. This took the form of really operating more efficiently and using renewable energy. In 2018, we achieved 100% renewable energy for all of our operations, corporate operations. So every data center, every corporate office, every store in 44 countries is running on 100% renewable energy. And of those renewable energy projects, 90% of them were new, additional Apple-created projects. We then get to 2020. And in 2020, we achieved carbon neutrality for our entire corporate operations. And that was also the year that we announced that we were going to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030 for our entire products. So that is all of our product manufacturing and the entire life cycle of our products, including the product use and the product recycling. So when you look at our footprint, 70% of the remaining footprint is in the product manufacturing, and that's really what I target. And the majority of that is electricity. So Scope 3 has been on our mind for a long time, and we launched in 2015 our Supplier Energy Efficiency Program and our Supplier Clean Energy Program. We ask all of our suppliers to make a contractual commitment to use 100% renewable energy for their Apple production. And so today we have over 200 suppliers committed to that program. That is over 70% of our manufacturing spend committed to renewable energy. We have 16 gigawatts of commitments and 10 gigawatts that are already online. Then we have our next audacious goal. Can we make, but not take? Can we make all of our products using only recycled and renewable materials? Can we end our reliance on mining? This involves paying attention to detail very early on in the design stage into every material that goes into our products. We, in this last year, we announced on all of our products that were announced, we achieved about 20% recycled content, with the 13-inch MacBook Air achieving 44% recycled content. But we design our products to be durable and long-lasting and to be passed on from owner to owner. But when they end their useful life, please get the word out and bring them back to us through our trade-in program, because we will recycle and we will reuse the material in it. And for a figure that might stick in your mind, for every 1 metric ton of the components of an iPhone that we get back and we recycle with our own robots, you're avoiding the equivalent of 2,000 tons of mined rock for copper and gold. So get your devices back to us, please. With all of this work, we have now reduced our carbon footprint by 40% since 2015. But with all the work, it's about how you do it, in addition to the progress that is being made, right? And so we are committed to reducing our footprint by 75%. And for the remaining footprint, those are the direct emissions that are just too difficult to abate or decarbonize in the next 7 years. By 2030, we will turn to high-quality nature-based removals. And climate change is a far-reaching and impactful crisis, and with crisis comes opportunity. We've all seen during the pandemic how we are all interconnected, how vulnerable we all are. and that it's the simple things in life that really bring joy to us. So we really see through the environmental work that this is an opportunity for us all to reshape and make the world a better place. And with that, it's really thinking about people at the center of everything, right? And environmental justice is human justice. Environmental rights are human rights. And every solution that we pursue really needs to be good for both people and planet. So this shows kind of the progress that we have made over the years. This past year, even though our revenue grew 33%, we kept our net emissions flat. Right? So we are decoupling revenue growth from emissions. It's showing that our programs and our supply chain programs are really scaling. They're really they're successful, and they are not just reducing our footprint, but they're also making our supply chain more resilient. We don't have all the answers. We don't pretend to, but we do have our goals and our commitments and a community of businesses and organizations that are really committed to getting this work done. Very excited to be here with you all and to connect so that we can all amplify this work, accelerate this work through collaboration and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bessma. I'm going to ask you to perhaps stay because you are sitting quite far in, if you wouldn't mind, whilst Andreas comes up and makes a few comments, because I'm then going to see if there's any questions for you, if that's okay. Thank you. Andreas from IKEA.
Yes. I take yours. Can I borrow yours?
Yes, let's see.
Yeah, just turn it on. So,
Hello everybody. So my name is Andreas and Ahrens. I lead the global climate agenda at IKEA. So as part of how we reinvent supply chains, I'll talk about how we support our suppliers to purchase renewable electricity as well as generate as much as possibly can on site. So we talked about this when we launched the playbook earlier this morning as well, that IKEA's own emissions is our total value chain emissions, because these only are here due to IKEA's business. We also talk about IKEA's range is our identity. So we don't like to talk about scope 1, 2, 3. We of course have 1, 2, 3 here included, but these are our emissions. The rest is just accounting. So this is our responsibility, and we are committed to halve this until 2030. Then how would you do it? Well, I could spend a lot of time to go through each and every step, but let's focus on the suppliers. So the tier 1, we have production, this is where we manufacture our products, like the Billy bookcase, the Pax wardrobe, the meatballs. People always laugh when I talk about meatballs. I should say plant balls, right? That's why I like as well as all product transport, so the shipping and the heavy goods transport, that we are transporting our products from the factories to the warehouses and stores where you as customers can buy them. And overall, what we found is that we have set up different portfolios or different offers for how to actually support our suppliers to actually invest or purchase renewable electricity. We started pushing a lot on the on-site generation, leading up to COP in Madrid. We launched 100 million financing of renewable energy investments. But what we realized is that that only takes us 15% on average of a supplier's electricity consumption. So you only have so much roof space on your factory or connected to it to cover electricity. We need to find other alternatives for the remaining 85%. And that's why last spring, we actually also launched then a program to support our suppliers to purchase renewable electricity. Because we realized this, that suppliers have maybe business cases for on-site generation, but they had an issue to actually purchase it from a grid, depending on the market. At the same time, we had a part of our purchasing department which supported and purchased electricity for IKEA's own operations. We thought, couldn't they do it for our suppliers? And after a year of change management, they were really excited to do this. It's about they need to know what they're getting into. But now they're really positive, so I'm not lying, they're really in a positive way. So we asked them, can't you just purchase it for the suppliers? And we couldn't actually purchase it for the suppliers, but what we do is that we bundle the electricity consumption of suppliers, and we have one project per country. So we just collect it, and then we negotiate a framework agreement and let our suppliers join there as well. And now it's a bit early. If you would ask me in 4 weeks, I could have actually shown what the result in Poland was. But I can already teach you that we have secured quite a lot of renewable electricity from new installations, as well as actually cut the electricity price in our biggest, one of our biggest manufacturing countries, which is a good sign with the soaring energy prices as well. So this is actually a win-win from both business and sustainability. And this is a business strategy everybody could adopt as well. But of course, we also need to support with energy efficiency. So how do we support that? It could also be offsetting premium costs. And if we realize that at least the first wave countries that we're doing for Poland, India, and China, we actually will save as much CO2 as we emit from all ocean transports on a yearly basis. So this is really huge impact that you can have. And how we work with it, we work very analytically, just taking all of the information from our suppliers that reported, work analytically. How much can we generate on site? What needs to be purchased on our grid? What do we add with electrification, etc. And then we identify initiatives like this and also can realize what is the outcome of it. I cannot say how big this is, but it's Poland is one of those countries, so it's going to be big, what we announce in a few weeks. So with this, I hope to inspire companies that you can actually look into existing setups in your business or start a purchasing department to support suppliers or join forces with other companies. And we, from our side, are happy to share this setup with any other company, so we can really accelerate action within supply chains. Thank you.
You stay there, you grab that, come on in, okay? I'm beginning to get how this works, one-to-one. So who has questions for Bessma or for Andreas about how they've done this? Right at the back.
Hello, thanks Ollie. My name is Lilian, ex-veteran. Nowadays I'm leading sustainability at Braze. Braze is a marketing tech company, and we're very early on our journey. On sustainability, we just completed our first footprint and are looking at climate strategy now. So I'm curious, we realized that renewable energy is going to be a big focus. And how did you first get started in terms of kind of the first 2 years? What are the focus projects and what was the rationale behind those? And I shall say that we don't really have any operational control over our facilities. So I think particularly when it comes to any leased facilities or data centers, how did you go about there to invest in renewable energy?
You don't need the mic, you already mic'd up. Oh. That's the mic's for Andreas.
All right. It sounds like your question was a bit about your own corporate footprint, right? And it sounds like you're maybe smaller electricity footprint, and you don't own your own facilities, right? There are, numerous so there are a number of options available, and depending on what country that you're in. I think you can always turn to your landlord. I think the policy advocacy side is really important, especially when you're smaller and you're distributed. That has more power almost than you kind of just going it alone and just trying to figure out your own footprint. I know that there are, at least in the US, when you look at the Clean Energy Buyers Alliance, there is a movement within that group to focus and target landlords. So that's one thing that gets me excited. It's like the smaller voices all banding together and being able to kind of just increase the attention to your demand.
Yeah, and to really go all the way back, is this on?
Yeah.
Okay, good. To go all the way back when we set our climate goals at IKEA, we have to go back in time, because I think we kind of forget that with the Paris Agreement. That was a huge transformational change, going from always improving efficiency to just being slightly less bad to really addressing the root cause. And when I got that project, it was like, can we even reduce our absolute emissions or can we even reduce our emissions in absolute terms? So that was a whole problem statement. So the first 1 year, 1.5, we spent just based on all data we had to just consolidate that, update models, doing scenario planning to see how much will the footprints grow and what initiatives can we identify that can reduce it and how much. And that has been really well invested time where we're still utilizing a lot. So what I showed here for renewable electricity, we already knew how big it was and how much we need to purchase from the grid already 5 years ago, but we had no way of actually how to do it. So we're still tapping into those bits. The plant wall also came from that work as well. So I think it's really to understand your footprint, doing a thorough analytical assessment, and also understanding what can you influence and not, and in what way can you influence it as well. You can also choose to go to another building, for instance. I mean, if you can't change, or if you can't affect the landlord, change one. So that's also a way to really assess actions.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry, I have like 50 questions for you, but I'm going to ask them afterwards because we have got wonderful more speakers to come in. So can we thank Andreas and thank Bessma. Right, so we're getting through structures, we're getting through how do you incentivize, we're getting through renewable energy. Let's keep going. So we're going to move now to actually some companies who perhaps are in supply chains. And also radical innovation. What does it take to actually innovate within this area? Do you know what? I'm not sure the words innovation and supply chains actually come together anywhere near enough. But as someone who is in quite a lot of your supply chains, actually there's a lot of innovation that can be brought from within the supply chain itself. That there's a lot of lateral thinking, there's a lot of room for manoeuvre within supply chains. So I'm so excited to invite up Fredrika, Head of Sustainability at Polestar, who I think are an incredibly innovative company. Thank you.
Let me get the mics work. There we are. Hi everyone, so happy to be here. I get a really good boost of hope and confidence when listening to all of these amazing people and the ongoing work that we are doing in our companies. So Polestar, let me see, my name is Fredrika, Klarén, I work with sustainability at Polestar. Polestar is a young electric vehicle company based in Gothenburg. And we were founded in this significant time when we know what we know. But in this rampant climate crisis, we also see that there are solutions, and electric vehicles is a very powerful climate solution already today. But it is maybe also the most underutilized climate solution today. There is no EV boom really. If you look at markets like Sweden and Norway and China, there's an amazing progress in terms of sales. But if we look at the global car stock, only 1.5% of cars are electrified in 2022, and that is not where we need to be to show up in time in the climate crisis. So for Polestar, a lot of our work is really about advocating for an accelerated transition and really showing data and numbers that can back that up. But we also want to talk about the fact that as an industry now, we need to secure that we take this time and actually try to redefine how we produce cars. Because looking at an electric vehicle, we see that it comes with a lot of debt in terms of carbon when it comes to the production of batteries and the cars. So life cycle assessment is the beating heart of our sustainability work. We were able to develop a methodology together with Volvo when we produced Polestar 2. We are an affiliate to Volvo. Their XC40 fossil fuel car is built on the same platform as Polestar 2, which means that a lot of the big chunks in the car, the chassis, the battery, and so on, is basically very similar. So we got to compare the carbon footprint of the Polestar 2 based on 3 charging scenarios with the XC40 ICE car or petrol car. So we clearly saw that we can move away from the question on whether or not electric vehicles are better or worse than petrol cars. Looking at climate emissions over the life cycle, they are absolutely better, a better choice today. we also saw that we can go for full climate neutrality on electric vehicles in a way that we of course never could on the petrol car. We can absolutely secure that electric vehicles, the promise that they deliver on climate neutrality is fulfilled if we only now start focusing on the production-related emissions. A lot of money is still put into legacy technology in the automotive sector, just upholding the status quo. What if we would take all of those money and put it into innovation, for example? We, as a young company, set out to establish an ambitious climate strategy. I've been told that we have a typo in this one. I would not sleep very good if we would have set out to have emissions by 2025. But as members of the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, we have committed to halving emissions by 2030. As a growing company that needs to produce this climate solution and get it out on the market, we of course need to create more emissions, unfortunately, due to production. But we have set out to decouple our growth from climate emissions. So we are absolutely striving towards halving our relative emissions to 2030. And we also now want to create a sense of urgency around the fact that we have to figure out how to make climate neutral cars, and we have to do this decade. We cannot wait until after 2030. So we created truly a moonshot goal for ourselves to create this climate neutral car by 2030. We didn't have a clue on how to do it. A car consists of 30,000 plus components. We don't even have data from all parts of the supply chain yet. But we know we have to do it, and we have to make it clear to our designers and engineers that it's really up to them to now start finding the solutions. So we created a project called the Polestar Zero Project. And we do not run that from the sustainability department at Polestar. It's an R&D department. It's all about research and innovation right now. We have decided to focus on the cradle-to-gate emissions and also the end-of-life emissions. But of course, in our climate strategy, we work to promote renewable energy in the charging and the use space, of course, as well. We will not accept offsetting from suppliers or from anyone else in this. We focus on eliminating both direct and indirect emissions from the production of cars. The time plan we have for this project is based in 3 phases. So, as I said, it's all about research right now. We have to, when we get to 25, know what kind of materials we can use in this car. Because I want to make clear also that this is not a concept car. This is a car that you all will be able to buy in 2030. It's going to have wheels and a steering wheel and everything. You're going to be able to sit in it. It's going to be a performance car. We are a performance brand as well. So we really have to know by 2025 exactly what kind of materials we can start engineering with. And mid-decade, it's all going to be about building the architecture, applying the science to our architecture. And then the last 3 years will be a product development phase, much like any other in a car company, really. We cannot do this alone, of course. We have put out call to actions twice this year to secure that we now attract the right partners who want to join this project, this very specific project. And we have an amazing lineup already now. We have gained so much attention with this call to action in such a positive way. For example, we have major players like Swedish steelmaker SSAB joining us. We have Norsk Hydro, an aluminium producer. We have Pensana, rare earth elements mining. We have Paper Shell, an innovative startup in Sweden working with bio-based material as a replacement to plastics. Autoliv safety functions, for example. And the amazing thing about them joining is, first and foremost, it's very brave. When suppliers and partners really come to us I don't think that they have understood that we really talk about net zero, that we are eliminating every single emission in this project. So they are so brave to sign up for this project. And also they supply to so many other industries. So the solutions that we will create in terms of how to produce fossil-free aluminium, we actually have direct emissions from aluminium production. If they can provide a solution now to all of their customers that's completely fossil-free, this project is going to have bigger implications than only for our car, of course. Advocacy is also a big part of what we do. We know that we have a spotlight because we're an exciting new company, and we want to use that spotlight and really talk about what matters. We went to COP26 last year, said we were going to take notes on how the automotive industry as a whole really signed up now to the 1.5-degree pathway. Unfortunately, we didn't see commitment from most of the automotive industry. We saw silence. We're coming back to COP27 to remind them again that we have to align, we have to create this common platform, and they can join Polestar Zero whenever they want. Transparency is a huge part in this, of course. We're embracing radical transparency as a young company. We have product sustainability declaration, very inspired by Apple in this, so thank you for that. We want to enable customers to now understand the impact of the choice that they're making, that it's not unproblematic, but that it's better. Consumers today actively distrust the automotive industry. How will we get them along for this transition if they cannot trust us? So we're declaring the carbon footprint of all of our cars and all of the variants and all other different important sustainability aspects that is good to know as a consumer. So you will get to follow our journey. Also, incremental changes is so important for us. We not only talk about 2030, but we talk about what can we do here now. We have facelifts in the automotive industry when you get to do changes on a model year update. We have decided that we don't want to just work with facelift, we want to work with sustainable upgrades. So this spring, when we launched our model year update for Polestar 2, we were able to show that we could cut 1.3 tons on the carbon footprint just by resourcing the aluminium to the battery tray and to the rims. These are boring, non-innovative changes that you can make, but they will have so much impact in the coming years. So yes, let's talk about radical innovation and 2030 and beyond, but absolutely let's also remind ourselves that we need to talk about incremental changes here and now, and we also have to just realize that that might be boring, but very needed to talk about. That was it from me. Thank you so much.
And Fredrika, if I may say, it doesn't sound boring at all. So I'm going to ask Fredrika, maybe perhaps you might want to just slip in and take a seat, because I'm now going to ask Eva Karlsson. So Eva Karlsson is the CEO of a company of which I think I own and wear 2 things, and clearly I need to upgrade that to many, many more. So Houdini is a very innovative apparel company, and would you like to come, Eva, and tell a little bit of the Houdini story?
Yes, thanks. So inspiring to be here, and I hope that I can add some perspective, but yeah, great work. Happy to be here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And you don't need that much gear. Maybe you need a couple of pieces or whatever. We're designing or enabling a life, as we look at it, where you can have fewer products that can do more for you. And we all know that the world doesn't need more clothing or stuff, just better stuff. Houdini, a Swedish outdoor brand based in Stockholm. And we've been designing for circularity since 2001. And when we say circular, we look at nature as the blueprint for what circular means to us. It's not only a flow of natural resources, It's a flow of that for sure, that has to be circular, but it's also a flow of products. How can we share more, and how can we extend the product lifetime immensely? I'll get back to that. But also, how can we share knowledge, just like knowledge is distributed in nature. It's distributed in a way that is open source, I would say. So how do we move to that phase in the context of circular? And this is our vision. The places we love and the lifestyle that we want to live, but to do that without having a negative impact. Of course, that has to be our goal. And moving beyond towards regenerative. It's going to be a long journey, of course. And 2001 is when we started this journey towards circular, next steps to regenerative. And we have been working a lot with what Fredrika and you spoke about, which is about collaboratively working with suppliers to radically change material design and so forth towards circular products. And when doing that, we've had a lot of help with working with the planetary boundaries framework. Because it's not only about climate impact in terms of carbon emissions, it's about understanding the planetary system in its entirety and how it's interconnected, and how if we start using more wood pulp, for instance, what does that do to climate in an extended timeline? So it's about all of these pieces of the pie, climate, land system, oceans, and so forth, and understanding or catching the rhythm of the Earth system. It's very complex. Sometimes we need to hold hands with scientists. And after 2 decades of work on our journey towards circular, for sure there's a lot of tricky questions that we need to ask ourselves, and need scientists to help us out to find the solutions and answers. But there is also a strength in just this as a mind map, to ask ourselves the right questions. And I know that we have to get into action as well, and not stay forever with the questions, but we do need to ask ourselves the difficult questions and kind of feel okay with not knowing all the answers. And not take a new direction which sounds or feels good, but actually ends up just moving missions elsewhere. And then forging partnerships with nature. The planetary boundaries might be like a platform to stand on, but then I think it's more of a spiritual storytelling, emotional drive that we need to have as humans. And that is looking at ourselves as part of that system. We are not here to consume nature. We're here to become part of it again. And that's how we can... I'm a bit afraid, and I think that I saw a film this morning, being here in New York, and realizing that we cannot stay in the technological solutions and think that everything is going to be okay. We need to reconnect to nature and become part of it, and realize that it's this mind shift or spiritual thing combined with new technologies that's going to make us reach the goals of 1.5 degrees. So we're about 80% circular today. We're moving towards 2030, when we've said that we want to have a circular ecosystem in its entirety, and that means everything that's production. We work with tier 1 to tier 4 in our supply chain, but it's also consumption. And I think that is really, really hopeful and inspiring work that we do now, and more now than a decade ago. Because consumption is a place where we can, at least in apparel, do magnificent changes. Disruptive, in a sense that moves us low-tech or no-tech towards the climate future that we want to see. We're part of an industry that is a $3 trillion take-make waste industry. Tons of design flaws. Some are really easy to fix, others are really difficult. But that's the situation. And on the consumer side then, there are 100 billion garments produced every year, and 60% of those are discarded within the first year. It's completely crazy, of course, and easy to become a leader, I guess. But still, we are in this context, and we can trick each other or ourselves into moving mainstream. So we have to reimagine everything, and we have to start raising those questions again and again in order to do it right. And those questions have to be at every level. Systems like microplastics or ocean systems, and then technologies all the way down to fiber or chemicals. And examples of how we can make it easy in the daily operations with a design checklist. Asking ourselves, does this product deserve existence? It's a very good question. I think that many products might not be designed or produced. Will it age with beauty? And so forth. And open source, to share knowledge. We're a small company, we don't intend to be the biggest, but then scaling our knowledge and creating ripples far outside of our company is really, really important. And there's no winner if there's only one winner. In this journey, we all become winners or losers. Just a few things I was thinking about in terms of value chain for us, and everything from customer and end of life, and all the way back, upstream, downstream, relations. I think we've been much more transactional as corporations for a long, long time, and we need to move back to a relational economy. And I think we've heard a lot of examples like that here today, on how we work very close and long-term with our suppliers, rather than jump back and forth to get the lowest price or whatever. Culture. There's a lot of things in culture, corporate culture and consumerism that we can redesign. Ownership. It's an interesting thing to see how we see ownership now as something where we have the right not only to use, but to discard or destroy. Maybe we need to ask ourselves the question, what can circular ownership be in the future? Maybe become caretakers and investors in a brighter future rather than the old type of ownership, which is linear. We explore circular business models, care and repair to extend product lifetime, and we've done so for a decade. And cultivating caretakers and co-creators. I think I realized myself that I use a lot of words that are kind of the words that farmer would use. Cultivate, or nature maybe. But this is a last little comment. Live large with less. I think it's really important. I don't think that people here at Climate Week are bringing tons of apparel to show off, but the fashion weeks that are coming up for sure do. But live large with less, I think, is a mind shift challenge. Maybe we can use a lot more great products for more rather than add tons of stuff to our wardrobe or our homes. This is a simple formula, just to remind ourselves of how we can measure and understand and work towards lower impact or eliminating impact. It's not about only product design and product production, but it's about the volumes we produce or the wardrobes that we have, and it's for sure about the lifestyle we inspire and enable. That is how we can mitigate impact and improve. Forward to nature. That's our journey ahead.
Thank you. Please stay up here, and for people that can ask you to come up. Oh, wow.
Yeah. All right, can I turn it on? Yeah.
I can be standing over here. That was probably me. I'm like letting off electricity. Does anyone have any questions for Fredrika and for Eva? Particularly in terms of the innovation. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Wilkinson. I'm a master's student at NYU for Environmental and Energy Law, and I'm also doing a research of textile EPR policy globally, so I'm very interested in your presentation, Eva. I'm interested if you could tell us a little bit more about your reuse system and take-back system. How was it effective? Do a lot of your customers actually use those actions? And are the products that they return, are they reusable? How reusable are they? Are you able to take the fabric? Or do they, like, I'm guessing that the clothes that you're making are made out of more sustainable materials. So if you could also just tell us a little bit the materials that you use.
Yes, thanks. We did a user survey a couple of years ago, because of course we've designed our products to be long-lasting and circular, but in the context of today maybe they're used as fast fashion items anyway. But it's nice to see, and we of course know also from repair services that we've done for decades, that there's a lot of people who fall in love but also stay in love with their products if they're designed in the right way, meaning that they will repair them and care for them. And I think that the average user used their Houdini garments for more than 10 years, several times a week for many different activities. So adding up, that's more than 1,000 times, while the European, and I assume also the US average is 7 to 10 times. So there's radical improvements to make. 100 times more use of the resources that we extract from the earth, for instance, that can reduce both production and consumption.
I'm a customer. I rent Houdini pants when I go skiing. It's also really good because I seem to change shape for every year after 40, so it's super convenient for many reasons.
So I have a quick question for both of you. Also as a small business myself, I think there's obviously challenges. We don't necessarily have the scale or the money or the lawyers that some other bigger companies do. But there's also advantages, particularly in terms of speed and being able to get things done. So what is your big hope of what you're going to be able to do next as businesses, which perhaps might be at speed? Because obviously, Fredrika, you spoke about the car, but sort of like, what's your big dream of what you're going to be able to do next? Because you both have an enormous amount of decision making within your organisations. So, Fredrika.
With the research we need to do now within Polestar Zero, having these solutions ready by 2025 when we're going to start mixing what's in the car, we're going to have to speed up research in a way that is not common. So that is our whole drive now when it comes to Polestar Zero, finding ways to research quicker so that we actually can take action. So that is the example, but there is so much to speed up, really.
I think research
what should we not speed up?
I think research is a great answer in terms of the need for more innovation. And Eva, what are you going to speed up?
Well, I think that the cultural shift, the mind shift, is what I have most hope for, because that can move at exponential rate. There's a lot of infrastructure that is going to be slow, but for sure gives me hope. The mind shift that I think that we're seeing now as well. Reconnecting to nature, understanding the value of nature and so forth. And then I would say the most important thing is to have policymakers make sure that we can scale sustainable technologies that have already been invented. And then for sure, innovation as well. I love innovation, but I do believe that scaling we have a lot of solutions that we're not implementing at scale.
Brilliant, thank you both very much. I look forward to driving a Polestar car whilst wearing a 10-year-old Houdini hatchback. So thank you so very much, both of you. I'm just going to ask now whether Ramiro Fernandez would like to come forward as campaign director at the Climate Champions team and perhaps reflect a little bit on what you've heard this morning.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation for the speakers. I have to say that for someone that has been spending the last couple of years working on a campaign, on the governance of the campaign with 10,000 members and over 30 partners, talking about criteria, pledge, actions, plans, reporting mechanisms, tensions there on specific relation with partners and others. It's been one of the most inspiring meetings I've been hearing to you on the concrete action that you're already taking and how you can see the implications of the companies itself and making the large scale of implications you have. And when I came to this whole thinking this morning about how to address this summer, and my initial reaction there was definitely the supply chains. It is, from what we see in Race to Zero, probably one of the major challenges that we are seeing and we're addressing, and also the major opportunities. And it just reinforced both elements on this side. And we have, in Race to Zero, we have 8,000 companies. More than 2/3 of them are SMEs. Those 2/3 companies of them are the suppliers of the other 2,000 companies, probably in many areas. So you show today the level of complexity and interconnectedness that is there. And again, the main, through all the different presentations, all the way through, I was thinking about the principle of radical collaboration that the champions are pushing and calling forward always. And you could see that. The supply chains, it is a challenge to connect there and the projections, but also it is a major opportunity to really drive forward this transition and reduce the emissions of the whole, I would say, from our perspective, Race to Zero, these 6,000 SMEs that are there, they need your support and your engagement to reduce their emissions. In fact, and I love this concept of radical collaboration, how it was reflected in all the areas. And also love to see there how this can have some massive impacts and implications. Getting national partners together to negotiate agreements on renewable energy there, or engaging all of those suppliers there. Love it to see that implication there, and specific projects there. Let me see my notes to see finance, comments, and summaries there. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. So that concept there, talking about helping others by helping ourselves, and very much inspired those pieces. And also on the challenge and the complexity, I was asking them about how you measure this, how are your supply chains reporting there? Because what we are seeing, it is so complex and difficult today for what we are having information on how these SMEs are reporting and structured, how you really measure those emissions. And so the tools that we're working on this year, it really helps to simplify this process. So I think we are getting a lot of insight and inspiration to many others on how to accelerate there. And finally, this element about, we need partnership, we need to work together, we need good processes and mechanisms to address and engage the supply chains with this carrot and stick, soft and forward. But the piece of innovation that you brought at the end, I think it really helped us on referring the opening of about this rethinking approach. And the rethinking approach with the ambition goal. This sort of, if we want to address this challenge, we need levels of ambitions and transformations in a speed and scale that we have not seen yet. So setting yourself a target of, let's really create a new car absolutely without emissions by 2030, and the implications that has. Things massive. That's the level of ambition of things that we need to see. And you mentioned there about how by doing so and engaging with your partners, you are aiming to have impacts far beyond this car itself, now influencing many other industries. So that reinforces again interconnectedness. So really like that. And we'll finish this saying that as an active skier that really encourages skiing, I'm much more encouraged to see how to use one of those products, Houdini, and get into circularity there. So thank you very much for being extremely inspiring session today. I learned a lot.
Thank you so very much. So I think we are now coming right towards the end of the supply chain leaders session. I'm just going to ask Johan to stand up and perhaps make a few final comments to close out this session and also the first morning at Solutions House.
Thank you, Soli. I think transformation of value chains will be the next big thing, not in sustainability, but actually in the business community. I'm absolutely convinced within 2 years, because we will move from waste chains to value chains. What we have today is really incredibly wasteful chains, supply chains, and it will be all about creating value that we heard from a lot of you. And to do that, we need innovation and we need collaboration. I think a company within 2 or 3 years, if you're not part of a value chain which is aligned with 1.5 and the future, you will be out as a company. So I mean, you basically need to understand your complete value chain. You need to have the right customers, you need to have the right suppliers to be able to grow and thrive. So that I think will happen, but I think in the forefront, you as pioneers can really drive this. In the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, I think we represent, say, 1% of the economy, we think in 1. And Race to Zero is maybe factor 10, the global economy is factor 100. And how we're thinking is basically, can this one part help to contribute to the factor 10 in the collaboration with Race to Zero, actually creating the best practices, the best ideas, the best tools, and just spread it and show that the race to the top will create a competitive advantage. Then we can take it to the next level to actually influence the global economy. So with that, thank you everyone for this first sessions, which I think have been incredible. Thank you everyone who has contributed. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, thank you so very much everybody. For the rest of your day and time at week, I wish you luck, I wish you solutions, and I wish you back here later in the week. Thank you so very much, everybody.